Chapter 4. Work, Economy and Housing.
People on their way to work. It's a common sight in many places. The majority of adult men and women have a job, and they normally work 37 hours a week. Men and women have an equal right to work. And since it's expensive to live in Denmark, both men and women work as the majority of families need two incomes. For many, their job is not just a job. They place great importance on having colleagues and on the social interaction they have at the workplace. What do you do? That's one of the first questions you'll hear when you meet new people. Many people consider their job as an important part of their identity, and work is something that people talk about a lot.
There are many kinds of jobs. For example, you can be an employee and work in the private sector with service, finance and trade, or in industry. Or you can work in the public sector, perhaps in the field of nursing and care. 40% of the Danish labour force is employed in the public sector. You can also be self-employed and own your own business, be it large or small. The majority of jobs require that you have an education and that you can speak and understand Danish. Denmark is often called a knowledge society, and great demands are placed on your education and qualifications. There are plenty of opportunities to upgrade your skills or undergo further training, and many employers offer their employees long or short-term continuing education. You cannot be certain that you will have your education recognized in Denmark. Sirius is the name of the authority that assesses whether foreign qualifications are transferable to Denmark. But the reality is that some people have to take whatever job they can find and wait for their dream job until their Danish language skills and qualifications are in place. I have a car repair workshop because I trained here in Denmark to be an authorized auto bodywork specialist. I chose this profession because I couldn't use my previous education as an economist and accountant from Baghdad. Denmark has a long history of employees organizing themselves into unions. The majority of working adults are members of a union. The unions fight for employee rights and keep an eye on whether laws and regulations are complied with. For example, there are laws on the working environment and safety in the workplace. There are also laws that forbid discrimination on the basis of gender, race or religion. The unions also negotiate extensive agreements with employers concerning wages and working conditions. The agreements cover large parts of the labour market. And when they cannot agree, the unions organize strikes.
You are personally responsible for finding a job, but you can always get help at the municipal job centre. Here there are computers you can use with access to the internet, and there are also notice boards with information about available jobs. You can also get assistance with your job applications. Job centre employees can guide you so you can apply for the job that suits you and your qualifications. If you lose your job, the job centre is where you register yourself as unemployed. To receive financial assistance from the public sector, for example social security, kontanthjælp, you must agree to take on any job you're offered. You have to be available to work. One thing is certain, you must never give up, no matter how many rejections you receive. I also had many rejections in the 1990s when I was looking for work, maybe hundreds of them. But I didn't give up, and in the end I got my dream job. It's the same job I have today.
Denmark is a welfare society financed by taxes and levies. Taxes in Denmark are among the highest in the world. When you work, you must pay taxes. It's normal to pay about 40% of what you earn. High incomes are taxed higher than low incomes. The money in Denmark is called kroner and øre. The large amounts of income generated by taxes pay for major national projects and benefit people in the form of, for example, free hospitals, free education, and funding for the ill, the disabled, and the elderly. A part of every kroner taxed goes to the healthcare sector. Hospitals and medical assistance in Denmark are free. Some of the money goes to roads and transport, and some to the police and the military. A part of it covers social expenses, for instance, state pensions for the elderly and childcare centres. A part of it also goes to education, because the majority of educational programs in Denmark are free. And then there's also culture and the environment. I pay rent, I pay car expenses, insurance and a motor vehicle tax. I pay for a fixed line phone and a mobile phone. Then there's also access to the internet that the girls need for their education. They need to use all kinds of materials for their classes. If you come to Denmark because you married someone who lives here, then your spouse is obliged to support you in the beginning if you can't find a job to earn your own money. When you begin earning money, it's normal for the man and woman to share the household expenses. But no one can take your pay away from you. Even though you're married, you have the right to your own money. It's expensive to live in Denmark. Even though the welfare state takes care of major items, such as the education of children, it does not pay all your bills.
It seems like you pay one bill after another, so you need to work extra hard to be able to pay all of them off. Then the kids also want name-brand clothing, and that costs money.
And the prices for a home, food, water and electricity are high compared to many other countries. Even though the level of welfare is high, there are still some people who find it difficult to manage and are, for example, homeless.
For someone like me, who comes from a country where there's a vast difference between the rich and poor and between the sizes of houses, it was very difficult for me to understand why the houses were so big and so few people lived in them. This is probably because I come from a culture where the houses are much smaller, and 2 or 3 times as many people live in them compared to here. House and home are a focal point in daily life. This is where you get together with your friends, and a lot of people spend a great deal of time and money on their homes. You can either rent or own your home. The kind of houses you see here are owner-occupied homes. Houses are the most common kind of family home.
Before I moved here, we lived in a flat in town. And when our eldest son was 6 months old, we decided to move somewhere greener, a place where we could also have a garden and more space.
In this area, there are many other parents with small children, and the children can visit each other all the time. It's actually really wonderful.
How people choose to live and what they can afford varies greatly. Almost 9 out of 10 people live in urban areas, but there are still some people who prefer to live quietly in the country. I liked living in a small town because it's a small, local community where you can actively join in and get to know each other in many different ways. There are many different residential areas. There are also residential areas where mainly immigrants and their descendants live. Slightly less than half of all housing consists of rental properties. In many places, the rental housing comprises large blocks of flats in modern residential areas.
Some residential areas are socially disadvantaged and have problems with unemployment and crime. In these areas, there are many residents who become involved and invest a great deal of time and effort to change things for the better.
To be able to live together in a community, we need to set up some rules, house rules. Of course, if you break those rules, then you can risk being evicted.
The house rules that are established as part of the permanent regulations governing the property where you live are part of the leasing contract. You sign a leasing contract when you take over the residence. And remember, more than one name can be stated in the leasing contract. It's a good idea for both the man and the woman to sign the leasing contract.